Hello and welcome to my constructive rant video, or what do you want to call it? I've never really done this before, but let's give it a go. As you see by the title, my point that I will be discussing or advocating to is the Vanguard needs a buff. And here's why. I have a little range of ships for comparison's sake. The Merlin, Mustang, Hornet, Saber, Freelancer, the Vanguard itself, of course, and the Constellation Andromeda. Dedicated fighter, and two multi-purpose crafts. Coming to that in a second. We're starting here with the P-52 Merlin. It's a little snub fighter. There's a mounted Gatling in the center and two size 1s. When you move up to a ship that has about twice the footprint, the Delta, you also have about twice the increase in firepower. Onto the Hornet, which is tankier, more sluggish than the Delta, and it has again way more firepower. As to the next medium fighter, we've moved from snub fighter to light fighter to medium fighter. We have the Saber, also with a reasonable footprint, representing the medium fighter here with 4 size 3s. Flash fire mount on the Hornet has a size 4 and 3 size 3s. Again, makes sense. The weapon increase and the two medium fighters, how they compare to each other. Hornet is slower, less nimble, Saber is a bit stealthier, and Hornet is tanky-ish, and packs a punch as well does the Saber. And then we move from dedicated fighter to multi-purpose craft, the Freelancer, and it has about the same firepower as the Saber does. But guess what? It has about twice the footprint and is 50% longer. It makes sense. It is a multi-purpose craft. It has a lot of cargo. It has living accommodations for the pilot and for crew. And I'm not talking turrets and missiles here, so it has about the same firepower as a Hornet and Saber. And then you move to the Vanguard, which has about the same footprint as a Freelancer. It is literally the same length, and the firepower is so underwhelming. It has about the same DPS within like a few percent margin as a Hornet and a Saber. Not combined, but same DPS as a Hornet or a Saber. And even though it is twice the size, at least, it's about 50% longer and it has twice the footprint. Like if you're flying behind it and you're shooting at it, you have a way bigger area to hit it on than the Saber. But that's logical. It's a heavy fighter. It just completely lacks the firepower. Moving to the same comparison I had between the Saber and the Freelancer, we have the Vanguard and the Constellation series, even the Exploration series, dedicated Explorer has the same firepower as this one. Minus a turret, but we're talking forward-facing firepower. And it is about 2.5 times the firepower than the Vanguard, even though, just like the Freelancer, it is a multi-purpose craft. And I'm not complaining about the Andromeda, it's balanced as is. It's about twice the size of a Freelancer and it's twice the firepower. Makes sense. What doesn't make sense is that a Vanguard doesn't have about the same firepower as the Constellation Andromeda. It's a dedicated heavy fighter. That's the catchphrase, dedicated fighter. It doesn't have any other role. It doesn't have any cargo, which I'll be coming to in a second. It is a fighter. It cannot do anything else. You might advocate, well, it's a long-range fighter, that's what it's designed to do. You don't fight fighters with your range. If I'm attacking an organization with my Vanguards, 3 Vanguards, for example, and because the organization is quite far away, and they have a Hornet and 2 Sabres, for example, I'm not outgunning them with a heavy fighter, which does not make sense. As this Reddit advocates, or Redditor advocates, it's supposed to be a carrier-independent combat craft. And if I have an organization without a carrier, or starfarer for that matter, I should be able to reach out. But when I get there with 3 Vanguards and they have 3 medium fighters, they are way more nimble, they have a way smaller footprint, and I'm not outgunning them. So you lose. It is not balanced. And they have a lovely picture on this Reddit, which makes a lot of sense to me. 2 size 5s and the size 2s in the middle. I'd even advocate for the size 2s in the middle to be removed and to be also a size 5. So you have 3 size 5s. Hear me out here. You might say, wait, that's way too OP. You can shoot everything in your side. It's, oh my god, it's so OP. Hear me out here. I'm going to be pointing at medium and light fighters here, but I'm going to make the tanks comparison. In the tank world of tanks, for example, you have light tanks, medium tanks, and heavy tanks. A light tank is incredibly nimble, but has lacking firepower. Makes sense. Medium tank is about a compromise between a heavy tank and a light tank, and it has reasonably firepower, reasonable maneuverability. So it just falls in between. And you have a heavy tank, and a heavy tank has amazing firepower. I mean, you're scared of it. You do not want to be in front of the barrel. But it's just not as nimble. Neither is the Vanguard. The Sabre and the Hornet are way more nimble than a Vanguard. Especially a Delta, which is way more nimble than the Hornet and the Sabre. So again, little firepower, a lot of maneuverability. Reasonable firepower, reasonable maneuverability. Lacking maneuverability and lacking firepower. What is going on? So what I'm advocating for is integrate or move the size 5 more flush with the nose, as I will be putting up a picture now. It looks ridiculous. Look at this. It's just dangling from there. Get something like a 300 series where it's integrated in the nose. Back to Fleet Viewer. Put the size 5 more flush into the nose, get rid of the size 2s, and put 2 size 2s on either side of the belly or somewhere else. And have or keep the size 2s and have it as this picture. Because the weapon arrangement doesn't make sense as well. You have a massive gun just dangling on the front of the nose, as you saw by the picture. You have all the weaponry on such a huge fighter concentrated on the front side of the craft. It doesn't make sense. On every other in this lineup and more other ships, you have the weapons all around the ship. You have them on each side on the Constellation here. You have them on the left and right side of the Freelancer here. You have them next to the cockpit on the Sabre, as well as in the hull. And the Hornet has them on the wings and on the chin, and an optional flash fire. The Delta has them all around the ship, as well does the P-52 Merlin even. I mean, this thing is about as big as a size 5 weapon, and it has weapons all around it. And for some reason, they couldn't allocate weapons on the Vanguard better than this? Just this little area on the nose has all its weapons concentrated. And yes, this is the more the concept 3D model than the release model, but it has the same weaponry and it looks almost the same. following to what I said about cargo, it's a dedicated fighter. I guess it doesn't need a lot of cargo, but it could have cargo. Even if it's just 1/10 of the freelancer, it can have cargo. How they allocate space is super inefficient. You have the modular section. I get that. That's logical. That makes sense. The pilot area is quite big. This could be cargo. And especially the back area here. Here you have the ramp that ramps down. In contrast, the dropship variant of the Warden, of the Vanguard, I mean, has a way wider ramp, which makes sense. It has to accommodate for the troops moving in and out. But the Vanguard doesn't need that. It's the Warden doesn't need that. It only has a max crew of 3, or most of the time 1 or 2. So you only need 1 person at a time moving in and out. So this ramp could be really narrow. And all this area should be cargo. Even if it's just like 10 SCUs, a little bit of cargo makes sense for such a huge ship. So, long story short, buff the thing with either an extra size 5 or removing the size 2s and make it a 3 size 5. Again, skill-wise, it makes sense. If you have the increments of size here and increments of weapons, it makes sense. If you go from medium fighter to heavy fighter, the heavy fighter is just heavy. A Saber in comparison to a Freelance makes sense. Constellation in comparison to a Vanguard does not make sense. It should be scary. People should be afraid of Vanguards. That's how it should be. It should be like a Delta to a Saber to a Vanguard. It should make sense. It doesn't. It has about the same DPS, but it is 4 times the footprint. So that's what I'm advocating for. A little bit of cargo, maybe even rework the thing, integrate 2 size 5s on either side and a size 5 in the nose. 3 size 5s make sense in comparison to 4 size 5s in a Constellation, which is again a multi-purpose craft. The Vanguard is a dedicated fighter. It cannot do anything else, and it, well, basically shouldn't do anything else, but it should be able to fulfill that role as a heavy fighter, because right now it's just a medium fighter, which is huge, basically. I hope that was constructive enough. So, constructive rant out.